Aloha and welcome to A Word with Ward. I'm Representative Gene Ward and we are broadcasting from the state capital, Honolulu, Hawaii. Today we have a special guest who's going to take us out of the world. We're going to go to the moon today, and I want to welcome Henk Rogers of Blue Planet. Hank, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We shared a conference. Well, you were there for the whole week. I was there for basically the beginning, but it was a moon-based conference. And before we get into the moon and all the future that you have now as the head basically of PISCES and the director of that, tell us a bit about yourself. I called you earlier Mr. Tetris. You says, I'm no longer Mr. Tetris. Because people can identify with that. So.
Okay, so I'm a UH computer science student. Went to Japan, wrote the first role-playing game in Japan, ended up with a publishing company, and yes, I did publish Tetris. That was one of my games. And fast forward to today, we control all the rights to Tetris. I'm partners with the guy who originally wrote Tetris. I'm retired from that business. My daughter runs the business now, my daughter Maya. And I focus on my missions in life. And my missions in life are end the use of carbon-based fuel, to which end I have a foundation called the Blue Planet Foundation.
Very familiar to the
and you know, we got the mandate for Hawaii to go 100% by 2045. Many legislative actions, but also public how can I say, outreach. We had children exchange 300,000 light bulbs, and we exchanged refrigerators on Molokai and Lanai, that kind of thing. So yeah, grassroots movement to help Hawaii get off of its $5 billion a year how can I say, addiction to oil, $5 billion with a B. And so that's my first mission. Second mission is to end war, and you know, that one is because we're spending a ridiculous amount of money. It's not so much about the people dying. More people die in traffic accidents or from other things.
Opioids, overdoses.
You know, there's lots of other people going to end up dying from something, and war is way down at the bottom. But it's because we waste a lot of money on war. You know, we spent more money in Afghanistan than we spent in all of the history of NASA. When you think about it, if we'd used that money to end the use of carbon-based fuel, we would be there by now.
Everybody knows what NASA is? That's
NASA,
code for he's giving me a hint to get on with what the interview is about, but NASA is?
The National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Exactly.
So it was created back in the 50s to compete with the Russians because we're you know, it was a space race to first get into space and then to get to the moon. And we won the race. And in some way, that's the problem. You know, we won that race.
Which kind of takes us to the MoonBase Summit, or you want to lead up to where we had gone before that?
I'm fine. So mission number 3 is to make a backup of life on Earth. And
make a what?
Make a backup.
Make a backup
of life on Earth. Make a backup of us and all the plants and the animals. You could say...
You want to clone me? No, you...
No, I don't need another you. One's enough.
One's enough. Or about yourself, too.
Yeah, no clone.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying that, you know, life as we know it has been on this planet for 3, maybe 4 billion years. Okay. And as far as we know, we are it. And I'm in the computer game industry. I used to be anyway. And if you're working on something, you make backups so that you have to start from scratch. Something could happen to life on Earth. Like 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs went away. A relatively small rock hit this planet. Why did the dinosaurs die? Because they were too stupid to get off planet. They were all here.
They didn't have a backup, obviously.
They didn't have a backup. And we don't have a backup, so we're pretty much as dumb as the dinosaurs. And we always we laugh at the dinosaurs because they went extinct.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that opening statement, we are dumb as dinosaurs. But I want to summarize, you know, in the political arena, if we can't put something on a bumper sticker, we don't know what we're talking about. The bumper sticker version of Henk Rogers is, he's a visionary. You've just heard 3 parts of the vision, and hopefully through this interview, we're going to hear the rest of the story. Because Henk, in fact, let me go back to one other personal footnote. You and I met face-to-face in Bali when the Hokulea was coming. I'll never forget that moment because I said, welcome home, Henk. Being that you do have Polynesian voyages. Oh, you're where? Okay, everybody sees that on camera, the Polynesian voyages. You took that very seriously because your ancestors on the Indonesian side were seafarers, and the Hawaiians on the Hawaiian side. In fact, Nainoa Thompson really
I think they're connected. I think they're connected. I mean, like, you don't learn navigation. And the islands, you know, the way we draw the lines between the islands today, that isn't how it was drawn like 1,000 years ago. It was very different back then. There were no like mega countries. There were little island kingdoms, maybe. And then people would travel back and forth between them. And so all of the communication between, say, Indonesians, which there was no such thing as Indonesia, and Polynesia, which there was no such thing as Polynesia. It was all little islands. That communication must have happened. Trade and knowledge. So the whole the whole thing, if you look at the world map, the Indonesians went as far as Madagascar.
Exactly.
And that is an equal distance from Indonesia as Hawaii is to Indonesia. I mean, it's a huge distance across a huge amount of space. So they must have known that same, how can I say, celestial navigation in order to be able to make those kind of voyages.
Whenever anybody mentions Madagascar, some people know that my wife is from Malays. If you go to the streets of Madagascar, you see the same people that are in the streets of Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah.
So clearly there was that navigation. Clearly.
You know, Malagasy is the similar language. They, unlike the people in the rest of Africa, eat rice and grow rice in rice paddies. I mean, this is all stuff that you see in Bali.
You can't make that stuff up.
No, you can't. It's fairly obvious. So what I'm saying is that the whole Polynesian voyaging, the reason I'm part of the Polynesian voyaging, is that, you know, that is sort of represents the human ambition of voyaging to other places and the human dream of finding the next Hawaii. Well, we've kind of run out of places to voyage to on this planet, and it's time to get off of our lazy okoles and get on with voyaging.
How many countries you've been visiting? How many have you?
Probably 65.
60. You know, I just came from Israel 2 months ago, or 2 weeks ago, and it's my 64th. So we have the same visionary kind of. Wow.
So I haven't been to Israel. I will go.
You got to go.
I know.
Anybody who's a Jew or a Christian doesn't know who they are until they go to Israel.
Well,
that's outside of the purview of where we are, but we're sneaking up on your new identity, other than being a visionary and a Polynesian, now that we know you're wearing the Voyaging Society shirt, is that DBED brought you into the aerospace program initially, and now.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say that. So
well, you describe it. So
yeah, I describe it. So I have my missions, and little by little, I'm getting out of my businesses and into my missions, and so I started attending space exploration conferences. You know and that was a lot of them were run by DBED. You know, Jim Cursifulli, that gang, and then I started traveling to other countries where they had space exploration conferences, and I got more and more involved. And then at some point, it was University of Hawaii researcher Kim Binstead came to me, and I'd known her because I was doing a virtual Mars thing, and she said, you know, we're building this habitat to study long duration missions on Mars. And we have a problem. I said, well, what's your problem? And she said, well, neither NASA nor University of Hawaii can own a habitat. And she said, can you own it and we'll rent it from you? And I said, okay, but.
Can't own it because they don't have the money, or they can't legally take possession of.
It's something to do with, you know, like the whole Stevie Wonder thing.
Well,
so they were like terrified of doing anything.
Okay.
And NASA just has a policy. They don't own these things.
So they came to you and said, hey, Hank, can you own one of these?
Can you own this?
Have you got one of these hanging around? No.
So no. They had a bunch of engineers that were working on it, and we looked at it. He said, it's 4 months till the first crew shows up. And so we looked at their plans, and you know, my architect and me, we looked at it and said, there is no way in hell these guys are going to do this, what they say they're going to do in the next 4 months. There wasn't anybody in that group who'd ever built a bathroom or a kitchen or done electrical. They were calculating stress loads on a new style of dome that we're going to buy, that they were going to make. And so we said, okay, we'll own it, but we're going to have to build it our way. So basically, we canned the entire crew, spent a month planning. We bought a dome from a dome company. You can just buy these things.
Yeah, they exist.
They exist.
Some homeless.
No. This is a serious dome.
Huge, big one.
It's a 36-foot dome. I mean, it'll withstand a serious hurricane. Domes are very strong, and this one has like steel beams, you know, like that. So
Buckminster Fuller.
Oh yeah, Buckminster Fuller dome, exactly. And we got a bunch of guys who build houses for a living to build the inside of the dome in a warehouse in Kauai High. Then they took it apart, took it up on the mountain, and built a habitat. The paint was still drying when the first crew showed up, but we did it, and we've now done. We finished our 5th crew. So the first 2 crews were 4 months, 4 months. The 3rd crew was 8 months. The 4th crew was 12 months, and the 5th crew was 8 months.
Did they go out of the habitat?
So the way it works is, if you're in the habitat, and NASA gave us 1,000 square feet for 6 people. And we fought for an extra 200 square feet so that they could actually stand inside of their individual tiny little pizza pie shaped bedrooms. I mean, they could actually step. Originally, they were going to crawl into those spaces.
The Homo erectus, you had to get
people have to stand up to get dressed.
Otherwise they're going to become animals.
You have to have private space, and it's crew psychology. So there's things that you need psychologically. So a mission to Mars to go to Mars takes 8 months. Then you have to stay on Mars for 6 months while the Earth goes around the sun, and then you can make an 8-month trip back to Earth. Okay. So you're spending 16 months in a spaceship and 6 months in a habitat on Mars if your mission is to go, stay, and come back. That's the shortest. It's a 2-year trip. So how do you choose people, and what do you do with those people to keep them from going nuts? And that's a real problem. That's a real problem. It's not something that we.
So the psychological factors.
The psychological factors. So if they're in sim, if they leave the habitat, they have to wear a spacesuit. It's just like it's an EVA. And they go through all of the planning and all the mission control of an EVA.
What's an EVA?
EVA is an extravehicular activity.
Okay, I didn't know that either. I'm supposed to know up to speed on all this stuff. I'm sure listeners didn't know that EVA.
I didn't know this stuff a couple of years ago, but here I am. I've been in it for a couple of years now. So if they leave the habitat, they have to wear a spacesuit, and they go through all the rigorous things that you need to go through if you're going to go on a spacewalk outside of the space station, for example. And then if you communicate with the outside world while you're in sim, we delay that signal 20 minutes each way.
You mean like a cell phone, kind of?
There is no such thing as a cell phone. You basically, if you send a text message, it's going to arrive somewhere 20 minutes from now.
So you simulated the actual distances.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So that's how long it takes for a radio signal to get to Mars from Earth, and when Mars is on the other side of the sun.
And UH is renting this from you, and you're doing the.
Well, it's basically funded by NASA. Okay. And NASA gives the money to UH, and UH does the research.
And then the major findings so far with these 4 crews?
It's actually 5 crews. Well, don't give them meals ready to eat. The MREs. Don't give them. So we don't give them. So we're giving them how can I say, ingredients, shelf-stable ingredients, and then they get to make their own food. And then you have
cook.
We have a kitchen. We have a kitchen, and the whole dome itself. The part that we do is we took that whole thing and we made it completely off-grid, meaning it's solar panels and batteries. And if the battery comes too low, then we have hydrogen as a backup, so that there are fuel cells that charge the batteries. So it looks a lot like what's going to happen on Mars, because you're not going to have any power supply from someplace else. It's all going to be batteries. And
everybody's convinced that if you want to go to Mars, you go to the Big Island, you go to Mauna Kea, and you simulate as close as possible any place on Earth that is there. So that momentum is getting, would you say, worldwide exposure?
So here's the deal. Hawaii is unique in that we are made out of oceanic rock. Continents and oceans have different rocks. The Moon and Mars have no continents, so they don't have any of that rock. The continents are made up of lighter rocks that floated up to the top over billions of years of plate tectonics.
Granite floats?
Granite floats. It's lighter. That's why the mountains are higher on the continents, because it's floating on the mantle. Yes, like an iceberg. Iceberg, you get to see 10% of it or whatever it is, and then most of it's underground. Same thing with the continent. This is the continent above the mantle, and this is below.
That's right. Mauna Kea is the tallest mountain in the world if you take the bottom to the top from Mount Everest.
A little bit connected there.
Being that I've gone through Mount Everest is one of the trips of those 64 countries.
Okay.
Traveling around
nice.
Nepal. Anyway, the point of that is then that we've got a gem here in Hawaii.
Yeah, so we have the same material that the moon and Mars is made out of is what the Big Island is made out of. It's basalt. And if you grind it up, then it's called regolith. And in order for us to build a moon base on the moon, we have to learn how to build using that material. And that material is almost the same as the material we have in Hawaii. So we can practice doing what we're going to do on the moon on the Big Island of Hawaii. That's why Hawaii is the right place to do this.
And is that one of the reasons why we had a summit conference?
Exactly.
About a MoonBase Summit conference
Yes,
a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, so we brought all these people to Hawaii, and we talked about how we're going to accomplish this, the moon base, and then I took them to the area between Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa and showed them. We showed them the Mars Hab, and so they could see what it's actually like. And you're on some other planet when you're up on those mountains. It's not like the rest of Hawaii. It's not a tropical paradise. There's nothing growing there. It's fresh lava flow. And you know, the place that we would want to practice building a moon base would be a place where there is nothing except lava.
In fact, Henk, let's take that and project it to what now is what NASA's doing, what is projected, what looks to be the purpose of a new moon base, what it would look like, and then from there what would happen.
Okay, if you look at the history of space exploration and space travel, it's always been space agencies. You know, it's been NASA, JAXA, European Space Agency, ESA.
All the governments have been
All the governments have been doing this, and at huge expense. And I'll give you an example. Well, of course, the whole Apollo program and space shuttle, that was us just doing it by ourselves. And then we decided, well, let's do international cooperation. And so the ISS, the International Space Station, is an international cooperation to the tune of about $40 billion. Nobody thought it was going to be that much. And it's still going, and it's and so, you know, when you know, do we have the appetite to do another $40 billion space station, but put this one on the moon? And that's been the problem, I think, historically, why we haven't gone back is just the money part.
And there's no race. Or is there a competitive spirit that's still in the old days? You said Sputnik was there. We are racing with the Russians. Is that spirit still there? It's gone.
It's different. It's different today. Yeah, there's theoretically a race that's going to happen. You know, because China said we're going to go build a moon base, and you know what? At some point, like our blood boils over. Is it like we're going to do this? And rather than have military bases built by different countries on the moon, I think the better solution would be to build a Honolulu on the moon, where everybody can come and everybody can, and we have an airport that everybody can land. It should be an international effort, but it used to be space agencies, but today it's completely changed.
It's private sector driven?
Because launches are no longer NASA. You know, it's SpaceX, it's Blue Origin, it's United Launch Alliance, ULA. All these other private companies are able to launch payload into orbit or to the moon eventually for a fraction of the cost that it used to cost NASA.
And so the vision will be using the private sector. They will be not only exploring...
It's a public-private cooperation. We don't do this without NASA, but we don't do this exclusively with space agencies.
So there's still public money in it?
There's some public, you know, there's some things that public money does, like the basic science, you know, like what public money does is find out about what we're doing wrong on this planet and figure out how to fix it. That is not the job of somebody who's trying to make money launching something. You know, so we as a people still need some science to be done to figure out how do we get out of this pickle that we're in.
How do the private sector guys make money or return on, you know, a SpaceX flight to say Mars or some of the discussion?
So basically companies pay money to get satellites up into space.
Okay, that definitely communication in the
communication, visualization. You know, like it used to be that the CIA would like send up these secret giant spy satellites, and now today's version of that is you send up little CubeSats that are about this big, hundreds of them, and you get like hourly pictures instead of like having to wait for that one satellite to finally make it across the spot where that you want to see.
How many satellites are up there now? Thousands.
Thousands,
right?
yeah. Thousands. But I mean, a lot of them are no longer working. There's a lot of space garbage up there at this point. Some of them are obsolete.
And projecting to the future, what do you see as Hawaii's role? What's the ideal vision, and what role can we play?
So we can be the place where the next moon base or the first moon base gets built. And we build it in Hawaii, and we figure out the robotics and the materials needed, and we build one in Hawaii, and then we send those robots to the moon, and they build one on the moon. So what that means is we have an industry in Hawaii.
A new industry.
A new industry.
Yeah.
A new industry, a high-tech industry, where we're doing robotics. You know, our kids are like killing it in robotics. And what do we do with them after they graduate? We send them to the mainland to get jobs. You know, that doesn't make any sense at all. We should create industries in Hawaii that enables our kids to stay here.
You know, we have an aerospace division in DBED. Is that something that would spark this, or is it Blue Planet, or is it the private sector when SpaceX comes in and Elon Musk comes and say, look, I want to do this big island thing, or is it where? So
let me explain to you where we are with DBED. Okay. So I was recruited and I accepted to become a director in an organization called PISCES, the Pacific International Space Center for Exploration Systems. And
not the
and basically
version, but
our job was to
space.
bring the job of PISCES is to bring space exploration business to Hawaii. But the problem is, you know, if Florida does this, by the way, and Texas does this, by the way, and California does this. I mean, but they do it with hundreds of millions of dollars. And we're trying to do this with hundreds of thousands of dollars. It just doesn't work that way. There's a huge difference. We can't compete as a state with that kind of a budget to do serious business in Hawaii. It's just not enough money. And so I decided that, you know, I got together with the board members of PISCES and talked one by one. You can't talk to them, you know, with more than one person because of sunshine. Oh my goodness! So I can talk I can have lunch with one of them, but I cannot have unless it has to be a board meeting. It has to be announced what you're going to talk about, and that's another reason why it becomes very difficult to operate. So I'm creating a new organization that's outside that and PISCES can play a significant role in this, and Hawaii definitely has to play a significant role. But I'm calling it the International MoonBase Alliance. And who are the members of the alliance? It's going to be the space agencies, it's going to be the spacefaring companies, and it's going to be the universities or even high schools that have interest in space exploration or.
So multi-countries.
Multi-country, multi-agency. I mean, it's like an airport. We don't build an airport and say, well, that country and that country and that country can come. No, we build an airport and say anybody can come. All you got to do is, when you land, you speak to the control tower in English, and these are the things. I mean, they decide this is your glide path, and the control tower will tell you this is what we need to decide about a moon base.
Is it going to be centered in Big Island or Honolulu, or how?
I would say Big Island, because it looks like when you land in Kona, you're already landing on the moon.
When I went to the conference, I thought, well, this is the closest I'll ever get to the moon, and it was clearly that area.
It's very much of a moonscape, and Kona is developing.
Is pretty much all the groups that you just mentioned in countries, is the buy-in pretty much that Hawaii, you are the ones? Because I got a lot of selling to my colleagues in the legislature to know that this thing is real.
I'm at the beginning of this path. I went as far as talking to the boss of the European Space Agency. I'm at number 2 in Blue Origin and SpaceX. I've been talking to JAXA people. I frankly haven't spoken to anybody in China yet, but I will.
Good.
Good. And so basically, it's my job and my ability is to go into all these different places and reach the top people, and they are going to be the alliance. And so everybody is the alliance. So we create this company, and it'll be Hawaii-based because, like, would we want to build a moon base in Kazakhstan? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of other places you could build a moon base. But then there's a question of, is that place going to be safe to go 10 years from now? I mean, the reason I mentioned Kazakhstan is that's where the Russians have their their spaceport. Yeah, all of the Russian rockets take off out of Kazakhstan. If Kazakhstan and Russia have a disagreement, that means that whole thing comes to a screeching halt. And it used to be the Soviet Union, but things changed. But Hawaii is a pretty stable place.
How's the feedback so far, speaking to the Europeans?
I think everybody is on board on some level. I think doing it in Hawaii is also not exactly, next to Washington. And so Washington does some inexplicable things that the rest of the world is a little, we're not so sure we want to play with those guys. But Hawaii has shown that it's a little independent from the rest of the country.
As time is going on so quickly, I want to see if you got some comments on space tourism, of which we have a commercial space license that we've been applying for the last 3 years. Give us an update on that and what it looks like.
I've talked to Richard Branson about launching out of Kona. There are 2 runways that are long enough to do space tourism, and basically you need like a 10,000-foot runway. And he said Kona is next, and I pointed out to him that Asia is close. That's one reason. If you go to New Mexico, where New Mexico has spent $200 million. That's an example of a state spending money to bring that business.
Close.
They spent $200 million building a spaceport. So he owes it to them to launch out of there first. But if you go to New Mexico, to that spaceport, there is nothing around there. You're in the middle of the desert. And so, where are you going to stay? There's no hotels, there's no infrastructure, there's nothing.
So we're, again, perfect for that.
We're perfect. And when you launch off a runway, you've got to launch over unpopulated area. And so when you take off from Kona, you're launching over the ocean. That is unpopulated area.
This is for weightlessness for tourists.
So they go up and stay up for 6 minutes, and then they come back down and land. It's a space plane.
How far up do they go?
There's a number which they say the space starts from here, and I don't have that number in my head, but you're weightless for 6 minutes.
Speaking of numbers, the clock on the wall says any closing comments, because we've got 20 seconds to wrap up.
Where do we go from here? We go to the moon.
Go to the moon.
We go to the moon.
You've heard it from the visionary himself, the Polynesian voyager, and a man who's not any longer Mr. Tetris. He's the man who's going to take us to the moon and put Hawaii in the center of that.
Mahina Lani. The name of the moon base will be Mahina Lani.
There you go. You've heard it first here from Henk Rogers.
Mahina is moon and Lani is heaven. Moon heaven.
Moon heaven. I'm Representative Gene Ward, witnessing moon heaven to begin now and forever. Henk, thank you for all your wisdom and all you're doing for the people of the state of Hawaii. Thank you for viewing, and aloha.
Aloha.